Are we live?
I just think we're just about to be. So don't talk
Okay,
about poop or anything embarrassing.
I know. I gotta
I
break that habit.
think we just talked about it. Oh, we have the echo again. Uh, uh,
I'll jump off.
okay. Hi, everybody. We had the start of show echo that seems to be a new thing. So Dani hopped off and we'll be back in just a moment. So you guys get me and me solo for the next 30 seconds or so. Hi, Sister Nino, Jonna, Pavs, Prosperity Now, Anna, welcome. Nice to see you all here. Let's see. Dani is not back yet. Hopefully she'll be back soon. And do we have a shit show for you tonight? Right? All right, here's Dani. Let's let her in. And then we can commence the
Am I echoing?
no, it's weird how that just happens the first time every time, and then as soon as you come back, it's fine. It's weird.
It's a new thing. So today I was on a
I can't see you though. I can only hear you.
okay. Today I was on a Telegram call.
Yep.
Is it still not? Jesus.
There you are.
And in the middle of the call drops and my phone says, temperature alert, it's too hot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm inside an air conditioned there's no. And then someone called me who was in my phone and like my contacts disappeared. There's just text stuff.
When it said your phone was too hot, even though you were inside with air conditioning, did you feel your phone? Was your phone hot?
No.
Okay. Because the other day it was like I was somewhere, it was today. It was the other day. I was in Whole Foods, right? And I put my phone down on the counter while I was washing my hands, right? And when I picked it up, it was fucking super hot, right? It felt hot, like, whoa, what's happening?
Is there like running some nuclear frequency through it?
Well, that or like is the bathroom counter at Whole Foods there to like suck all the data out of your phone when you put it down? Right?
Everything is. I'm surprised that you shop there.
The shopping situation in Austin is actually kind of difficult. There's not like a solution. There's not a good.
You have natural grocers?
Yes, but only on the outskirts, right? Only on the outskirts of Austin. There's right. So, but the issue in Austin is there's no like you have to go to several different stores to get all the things you need, right? Whereas like in Los Angeles, like if I'm not worrying about budget, I can deal with pretty much all my issues at Erewhon, right? And if I'm trying to be somewhat wise, then like literally on the same strip of road, I can go to Lassen's and Erewhon, or I can go to Gelson's and Erewhon, right? And it's just like two, but here it's like you have to go to Central Market, Whole Foods, HEB, maybe Trader Joe's for what, right? Like it's just that there's not like a good single solution. I'm very surprised Erewhon hasn't come here, considering how much of Hollywood is here as well.
That's a good point. I just like my favorite meat is at Whole Foods that I don't eat anymore because I won't go. It feels like a prison. Mm-hmm. I don't want to participate in their like scan my biometric. I want nothing to do with any of it. They've lost me. Like I'll go without my favorite stuff before I'll go back to a Whole Foods.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I buy less and less stuff there, right? Like it's, there's just a few things that you can really only get here. And yeah, and I don't love it either. It feels weird in there. Did you see there was like Laura sent it to me, or maybe there was an Instagram video of a girl going through Whole Foods and looking at all the ingredients lists of Whole Foods products. And like half of them have something called bioengineered food product as an ingredient, right?
What?
Yeah.
And you've got to imagine that's probably in all their deli stuff, all their salad bar stuff.
It's like all the stuff that is like sort of made there.
Correct.
Stuff that comes in boxes, like, from a manufacturer, the stuff that's like
not yet.
Right. Yeah, so it's like, oh, okay. Like, is like there the chip in there so that you don't even have to use your Prime card? It just does it for you at the front, right? Like,
yeah,
right. It gets into you, and then the whole thing is just it's bad. Anywho, like I said in our community post, we treated ourselves to a semi week off. Last week, I told everybody we took a break from the circus, but they sent in the clowns this week. Faux show. Whoa! Did you see the orb?
No.
There's fewer of them in here, I think, because there's no natural light, so you can't see them as well as in the other apartment. But I only get them when it's very important, right? And one just went when I talked about this being they sent in the clowns. There was like an orb that went. I'm sure if Laner's there, she saw it. Jonna, any of you who saw it?
They definitely sent in the clowns, and I was kind of disappointed in myself for giving my sacred attention to the clown show for the Eric one, and then you sent me the Brett one, and I'm like, this is a targeted attack on us. and our attempt to step away has been thwarted, but I can only blame myself. I did not have the willpower to not track the narrative changes.
Remember, eventually I got off meth. That only took about 15 years. So, right?
Okay.
Acknowledging we have a problem is the first step, right? Maybe we should bring in Chris. Do you know my friend Chris Kaler? Like, he's the one who he helped me quite a bit, like just kind of cut the cord from the meth. So maybe he's an energy healer. Maybe we can invite him on as a guest to just end the show.
Yeah, maybe we should. It'll be our last show.
Oh, anywho. Yeah, I mean, so like, I like eased slowly into it because I've been very tennis focused because it's been the US Open. But once you get past like Labor Day, it starts to be a lot less tennis because you're getting down to the business end. So there's many less matches. So I've had a little more time. So like I've been splitting my nonsense time between tennis, which is far more important, and listening to a few things again. But it's so clown and so cartoon at this point. And we did cover a little of, we recorded our regular Words podcast on Monday. It won't be out till next Monday. But we covered some of it there, and that was kind of like the start of the digging back in. And so if you haven't joined us at wordspodcast.locals.com, promo code welcome to Words, all one word in capital. Next Monday, there'll be sort of a wandering mess of an interesting show there that went kind of all over the place.
Okay, so after that show, so I'd say the last 15 minutes, I was really struggling to stay awake.
I saw you were yawning. I've never seen you do that during shows before.
And I was like, there were moments where I felt like I was losing consciousness. And then as the second we were done, I just had to lie down and take a nap. And I don't recall what information was coming in, but it had to do directly with what you and I were talking about. Yep. And then I was in a daze that lasted until this morning. All of yesterday, I was gone. Like, I don't know what dimension I was in. And that informed the solo podcast that I recorded. Like, wherever we went in that podcast was deep. Right. Like maybe we were meandering or whatnot, but I think we were touching on something pretty big.
Yeah. So you guys will have to wait to see, right? The ultimate tease there. You guys will have to wait to see. But we're starting to. We had, I think we may have hit on an identification layer of like what it is exactly that we're doing here and sort of what our role in this is that is more ancient than just us being smartasses on YouTube, right? And so okay, but we have go ahead.
I just want to mention what brought me back to talking about what we're going to talk about today. I know you brought other things as well, but it was, I still sometimes check Twitter. I'm not very active there, but just to get a lay of the land. And I saw that I was tagged in something and there were some comments. So I went and I looked, and it was Amazing Polly had made a comment on Brett's announcement about this Rescue the Republic thing. And then Nicole, who watches our show, tagged me and said, Dani and Emily have been talking about this for years. Like, they've been calling out Brett's shenanigans. And then I saw that I was blocked from Brett Weinstein's Twitter, even though I had not been active in his stuff at all. So my sense is that it was either that I was tagged in that response, but I actually think it was more preemptive. And then, and I'm just going over what we mentioned in our Monday podcast, but since people aren't going to see it until Monday, then I saw that Mickey had posted about Rescue the Republic. And then I just saw, and you and I were talking behind the scenes, like, oh, the synthesis is here. This thing that you and I have been talking about for years, they're bringing it to this like big grand, I don't want to say conclusion, but the next phase. And so it felt just like irresponsible for me to not at least track what we've put so much effort into analyzing the whole time. That was kind of my entry point. I just wanted to share.
Yeah, they had to
rationalizing my
to send out some pretty good bait to reel us back in, right? But the way that sort of played out was that, like, so I started seeing that Rescue the Republic thing early last week. Right. So while you were still not paying attention, I started seeing that and I was just like, oh, I knew what it was. Right. But I was still trying to ignore it. And then when you said he had blocked you and you asked if I knew about that, right, we dove into it a little bit on the podcast and you brought up this clip of him on the Jimmy Dore show talking about it. And I'm like, wait a second, he's in Mickey's studio. Like I could tell that was Mickey's studio. Right. And then while we were recording on Monday and today Brett on Joe Rogan came out and they were literally recording that while we were recording ours. They recorded that on Monday. So of course he was here in Austin. He was in Mickey's studio. He was at Brett at Joe's studio.
Correct.
And when we pulled it up during the show, and you guys will see it when it comes out, but like there's a list of things that are like the demands of the Rescue the Republic.
You want me to play it? I have it queued.
You have it queued, but you haven't played a little part with that because the thing about free speech is industry, but I'll bring up that list. There was also
perfect.
List. Go ahead.
Perfect. Okay, so let me just move it on over. Do I have screen share?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just moving it to okay, we're good to go. Sharing sound. Here we go. So this is the list. Are you pulling up? Do we want to see the list first? Or do we want to hear this clip?
Well, you play the clip. You have it up. Go
okay.
ahead.
So basically, just to lead into it, because the clip doesn't include all of it, Brett's listing all of the things that Rescue the Republic is vying for. Okay, here we go. Fair use.
Just notice how much prettier than usual Brett looks. And if you guys go watch any edition of Plandemic, or any important interview Mickey has ever done, you'll recognize that Brett is sitting in his studio and looking exactly like what people who star in Mickey videos look like. Correct.
Okay, here it goes. Fair use.
Stories that we want to hear, but in fact, we pursue the truth that we need to know. We need equal protection under the law. We've seen egregious overreach of lawfare being used against political rivals, being used against dissidents. We need a rational border policy because although immigration can be good, it is not good inherently. And having an open border in which we have no idea who's coming across and what they want and whether they even want to be Americans is very important. There are threats to the family. There's an antinatalism that has taken over our institutions. There is an onerous belief that the state knows better how to raise children than parents do, and that in fact the state has the right to take children from parents and inflict experimental medical treatments on them that have implications across the child's entire life. So that's the beginning of a list for you.
Free speech. That's an important one too.
Yes, I guess I missed that.
Freedom of speech.
Oops, okay, pause.
Well,
Wait.
I agree with you. I think that would be the most important one because without that, you can't get anything.
It'd be the most important one, but Brett just forgot to mention.
Forgot that. And of course, at this point, they tricked Jimmy Dore into participating in this. And he's just had his first clue. Let's see how long it takes him to realize that he's fallen for yet another set of shenanigans. Okay, but it's hilarious. So their list includes lots of things, not free speech on their list, right? But this was what was so hilarious to me as we're looking at the list, right? I mean, some of this we obviously agree with. All of it we probably agree with, right? But, you know, the last one is a return to truth-seeking and open dialogue, says the man who blocked Dani from him on Twitter, right? And so later in the show, I have another clip that is pretty ironic considering this, right? So, but to me, that was just classic, right? Yep. Like, I'm calling for open dialogue, but if you say something I don't like, I'm going to block you. Okay. Right. So, anywho, Okay, so I started paying attention to things like a little bit, sometimes I listen to things at work, right? Like that I don't have to pay full attention to, right? So I started listening to a little bit last week, and actually probably like more important on some levels, because like the Brett and Eric nonsense is just so easy and predictable. It's shooting fish in a barrel. It's fucking fun, but that's what it is. But I listened to someone who, like, I've seen him pop up in the alternative media, and maybe I've read like a few articles by him over the last year or so, but I hadn't really listened to any long form interviews with him. I listened to Mike Benz on Tucker Carlson.
Yep.
And it was really good on a number of levels, right? Like it was a pretty interesting listen all the way through. And I've been tracking the Tucker situation,
Yep.
right? Which is like another one where it's like, okay, like, are some of the alterations in positions, are we training that machine as well, right? Or is it really like, okay, so some things have come up in some shows over the last few months, and it's opened like a window for him into some of the reality about his life. I'm more inclined to think the first, because I'm cynical at this point, but there's a part of me that still enjoys narrative arcs, and so I'm willing to consider the latter. But he acknowledged again in there what his father had been a part of as far as the propaganda dissemination. And he acknowledged in a very sort of tame way that maybe what he thought it was and what it actually was aren't the same thing, and that's something he's been dealing with. Go ahead.
Okay, so I listened to the first half because you sent it to me, and I heard that, and I don't feel like I track Tucker as closely as you do. Had he talked about this before, that his dad was Voice of America, or was this a first?
Well, it's come up before. Yes, he's talked about it before. It's come up, his father's relationship with the CIA, that his father worked for Voice of America. It came up in that Sean Ryan podcast that one of our listeners suggested I go listen to, that like maybe it was Operation Mockingbird. He wasn't sure, kind of thing. He loves his dad, blah, blah, blah. So this was still yet like a further sort of acknowledgement that I thought this was what it was, but I'm coming to understand that it's actually this. And he even said something, and it was like, I listened to this probably last Thursday when I was at work, so it's not fresh in my mind. So something that is almost equal to like, I'm learning that things aren't necessarily what I thought they were, and having to deal with that. And he didn't go into it further, right?
Yeah.
But he acknowledged that there is inconsistency between what he thought something was then and what he understands it to be now, and that inconsistency is a wide delta. But anyway, so that was interesting. Like, and the Mike Benz guy had a ton of interesting things to say about what's going on with the Pavel Durov thing and the X-ban in Brazil, whatnot. But there was one section that I thought was, he explained this. It's obvious, right? Just like what Bustamante was saying was obvious, but in that case that he was so revelatory about his position was interesting. Mike Benz seems to be not on the same side as Bustamante, but I haven't heard somebody put it together this clearly and concisely in less than 10 minutes about this particular issue. So I'm going to play, it's actually kind of a long clip. I might not play it all, but I thought this was pretty interesting. Again, I'm not, you guys know I have my, I'm not a big believer in democracy or anything like that, but there's something that most people think it is. And we've been playing for many years now on this, what's the difference between democracy and quote, our democracy. And I think he lays it out pretty well here, what it is. So I am going to bring that up and play the clip. All right, let's see. Let's get the sound of the video clip share. Here we go. Fair use. Thank you, Tucker.
I do want to get back to this sort of exporting the First Amendment concept that was such a big part of American statecraft. I think almost no one, there's almost no better example of this than what happened with the State Department's Global Engagement Center, which is the main censorship artery of the U.S. State Department. It also works with a lot of a million of these censorship NGOs and USAID and this whole network. It was set up by Rick Stengel. And, Rick Stengel, would you say that his job was to export the First Amendment, former, managing editor of Time magazine. And
Real quick, he had just finished explaining how the United States used to use the First Amendment, try to export the First Amendment to other countries to use it as a weapon against leaders that they didn't like. Right. And then at a certain point that became not as useful. And so they had to have a shift. So I'm just giving you guys the setup. So he's talking now about the shift here.
Cool.
Donald Trump was elected in 2016. The guy whose job was to export the First Amendment wrote an op-ed, I believe in the Washington Post, effectively calling for an end to the First Amendment, that it needs to mirror that what Europe and other countries have.
And then he wrote a book making the same case.
Right. But again, this is the guy who was the Undersecretary of Public Affairs. This is
a very evil man, Rick Stengel.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make here is the free speech absolutist who was in charge of U.S. government projection of free speech. All it took was one election for the entire diplomacy architecture that this principle of free speech was based on to get completely bottomed out. All it took was Donald Trump getting elected for, arguably 200 years of a First Amendment principle and 70 years of this principle of exporting the First Amendment to be entirely discarded because it was leading to the wrong kinds of people being elected. Free speech on the internet was blamed for the loss of the Philippines election by the State Department in 2016. It was blamed for the events of Brexit. This is why the U.S. State Department funds so many London-based NGOs and university centers and influence operations to stop Nigel Farage and the Brexit movement. It was blamed for the rise of Trump in 2016. It was blamed for the rise of Bolsonaro. It was blamed for the rise of Modi in India. In country after country, the free and open internet, unfiltered alternative news, the rise of citizen journalists, the rise of citizens in those countries who have larger voices than CIA-backed media, than USAID-funded media, than State Department-funded media, has meant that the State Department has lost control of those countries. And what happened was, after 2016, the technology and the networks were established to be able to add a new toolkit to American diplomacy, which is diplomacy by censorship. And we have formal government programs at the State Department dedicated to getting foreign countries to pass domestic censorship laws to stop the rise of right-wing populist parties in those countries. I'm going to say that again. We have formal government programs at the State Department whose job is to lobby foreign countries and pressure foreign countries to pass censorship laws to stop the rise of domestic populist groups. So you have truckers in America whose income tax is going to pay foreign governments to censor their citizens. This is the sort of schizophrenia right now of American
We're
diplomacy.
becoming the Soviet Union, which exported poison around the world for all those years. I really felt like the United States was, the bulwark against that. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm trying to reassess. What is true now is we're doing what they did. We're sowing chaos and tyranny around the world. It's like I am so heartbroken to see this.
Well, it's amazing you say that because as someone who was sort of present at creation in terms of watching this all get established and spending my whole life monitoring it and chronicling it, they were very aware of that.
My new book, Keyboard Rich, How Anyone
Have you read Keyboard Rich yet?
has just hit the wall.
When they were setting this up, and when I say they, I mean NATO, the U.S. State Department, the UK Foreign Office, after the 2016 election and after Brexit, and they began this whole consensus building quest about how to get all the relevant stakeholders from the government, from the private sector, from civil society, and from the media to all come together and create this whole of society censorship coalition, whole of society counter misinformation coalition, technically they call it. But they were very aware of that what they were doing was exactly what they accused Russia and China of doing, intensely aware. And there was much hand-wringing in the beginning of this, in late 2016, early 2017, that we need to be extremely careful as we are establishing this infrastructure, that it does not appear to be what Russia and China are doing. That Russia and China have what they said was effectively, Russia and China don't have the problem that we have. They don't have rising populist movements in their countries that are opposed to the state institutions, that are opposed to the state priorities, that are winning political power. How do Russia and China solve this problem of domestic populist insurgency? Well, they use, I'm not joking when I say this.
Giving their citizens political power, in other words?
Yes, yes.
Do they ever stop and just ask, like, since when is it okay for the people in charge of a government to ban populism? I don't understand. Like, when did we all agree that populism is bad? I thought the whole system was fundamentally a populist system. The country belongs to its citizens. I thought that was the whole deal.
Oh, I can answer that because it's basically doctrine. There's been a redefinition of democracy from meaning the consensus of individuals to meaning the consensus of institutions. And this is a very clever sleight of hand reframing trick that they played after the 2016 election in the US, and they were setting this up. So just to get
they're playing with revolution here. I mean, they've lost their legitimacy. So I'm not going to try to overthrow the US government. I'm 55. I'm not going to do that. But at some point, someone's going to try to do that. And it's going to be kind of hard to see why they're not justified in doing that, because it's not legitimate. Their legitimacy comes from the consent of the governed. That's our system. And when they no longer have the consent of the governed, they're not legitimate, period.
So all I care about is freedom of speech on the internet.
But if you have no freedom of speech, it's not a legitimate country.
So there's a lot to get to on all of this that I think is maybe actually picking up what we were talking about with when they were setting this all up. I think it actually kind of elegantly dovetails with the point that you just made. When they were setting this up, they said Russia and China don't have this problem. We will have a PR nightmare, a crisis of legitimacy, if we simulate exactly what Russia and China do, which is top-down government control. So what they did is they came up with a concept called the whole of society framework that would, in order to astroturf the appearance of a kind of bottom-up organic censorship industry that the government would simply fund and intermediate and direct and pressure. So this whole society concept is that the government is not the censor. It is simply the quarterback of the censorship ecosystem.
All right, I could keep playing it for a long time because it continues to be interesting, but I think you get sort of the point that I was trying to make. So first of all, this idea that they used to overthrow or create chaos in other countries by trying to force them to have a First Amendment, right? Trying to get them to allow free speech for their people or whatever it is, because once people had free speech, then they would overturn the government, and then that would give them movements to fund and whatever. And as soon as that backfired, they switched to now they pay literally. So what's happening in Brazil, right, with Lula and X and the Alexandre de Moraes with the judge who looks like he's playing his role in the same movie that Klaus Schwab is playing his role in, because they both look so freakishly central casting for the role they're playing, right? Our government is setting up the systems and the tools for them to do that, literally paying the Brazilian government to create censorship laws in their country, right? That will go after right-wing populism, but also to Glenn Greenwald's point, because he's, it seems to me like he's fled Brazil. He's not in his regular studio for the last couple of days. And also Michael Tracy's been filling in for him again, right? So it seems that he may have fled Brazil. That if they can get enough governments, EU, Brazil, whatever it is, to force the social media companies to change their policies, then that effectively creates that censorship for the United States, because it's too difficult for all those companies to have different infrastructures and different sets of rules for the different countries. So they have a problem here with the Constitution and the people's belief that they have a First Amendment. So instead of doing that, they're basically exporting the issue to countries that don't and paying them to do it for them. And then the other point being that literally that within the government, they have changed the definition of democracy from consensus of the people to consensus of the institutions. So when they talk about our democracy, like it wasn't just a fucking metaphor. They're talking about if all the institutions, and they decide what they are, agree that something is so, then that's democracy. And you're starting to see, like, even, you know, you're starting to see articles and things pop up in the last couple of weeks or whatever it is, that basically democracy is a threat to democracy. Letting people vote is a threat to democracy. The Constitution is dangerous. All of this kind of stuff, right? Whatever's going on between Pavel Durov last week and the thing going on in Brazil and whatnot, like the cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows what's going on. And so all you can do is shut down the ability to communicate about it, right? It's at that point and all hands are on deck for the CYA, the cover your ass operation.
Did Mike Benz explain how they changed this in government? Like, did they change the Constitution? Did they add a new amendment? Like, what did they actually do? What doctrines were actually changed? Who changed them?
He said that, and so I mean, he talks a lot. That was like, there wasn't a concise moment where like that was the most concise that I could get it. He's going to go on and explain how there's these 4 pillars of the whole of society: the media, right? The NGOs, there's these constellation that make up 4 pillars, right? And they together start defining democracy as consensus of the institutions. And of course, the institutions are the 4 pillars.
And are these the pillars that were set up through the Patriot Act and Department of Homeland Security?
No, this seems to be something more recent. This seems to be a problem that the switch, like it used to be more effective to overthrow dictators in the Middle East or the Asia or Latin America or whatever by forcing free speech on them, so that, right, forcing them to adopt free speech or like recommending that highly to the populace. And then it would give them the ability to sort of infiltrate the movements that were pushing for this to help to overthrow, like the color revolutions kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
And then what they did, but that this sort of Western obsession, let's put it that way, I'm not right, with free speech, right, created a scenario where the way that they used to use the tools against governments in the Middle East and whatnot started being used by the people in the West against their own governments, right? Like this is how Trump came to power and how Brexit was organized. It was organized through social media, on Twitter, like through apps and things like that. That's how these protests and memification and whatever did it. So now we need to not have free speech, but we can't make it look like that's what we're doing. And so instead, right, what they have done is this weird redefinition of democracy coupled with exporting censorship, right? Yeah.
I get that, but I'm still stuck on the redefinition of democracy. Like, is this official? Is this a real thing that has legs? Is this just like a handshake backdoor agreement between some of the power players? The reason I was asking about the 4 pillars is because Mel K, and I know part of her work is that under the Department of Homeland Security, under the Patriot Act, which let's not forget Joe Biden co-authored, they created these arms with the NGOs and whatnot to do the dirty work.
Yeah, so I can play a few more minutes of it if you want. He does talk about, I think it's in this clip that I still have a little bit more of if you want me to play it, about the Department of Homeland Security reading in some of these organizations into this stuff, right? So I think remember during COVID, how they redefined the term pandemic and they redefined the term quaxine, right? Yes. Like these are not words that are in the Constitution. Right. So they don't require a constitutional amendment or a law to be passed to change them. It just requires that the people who are discussing these things, like that's what he's saying, it's doctrine. So doctrine is like how they talk about things, right? Rules that the people within the circle obey when they're talking about things and executing operations and whatnot. You want me to continue playing the clip?
I might. I'm looking up the definition of doctrine because I thought a doctrine, a rule or principle of law, especially when established by precedent, a statement of official government policy, especially in foreign affairs or military strategy. So it sounds like nothing
No
written
people.
has been
Right, nothing,
changed.
and nothing that the people have anything to do with. It's just,
Right.
you know, it's
Well, let's
rules
just
that
call
they
them the
create.
plebes. We're not even people. We're just like the vermin that get in their
Oh, but
way.
Eric, we're not even plebes according to Eric Weinstein. We're plebiscites.
Oh, did you hear when he said low value person?
I didn't
Oh,
hear
no.
that, but I heard plebiscites.
This guy.
Totally.
Yeah, I kind of would be curious to hear him mention the
I think
Homeland
it's in this, so
Security.
let's listen to a few more minutes.
Okay.
I think it's in this part, but if not, with especially the whole thing is really good, and it's right up your alley in terms of, you know, a lot of the things.
Ecosystem. So it is not like Russia and China in the sense that, you know, the Russian Federation says this media channel is banned. Instead, it would be the American government paying to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars all the different censorship ecosystem players and exploiting that leverage to have that outcome arrive semi-organically. And they were very careful in establishing it, you know, according to this idea that what we will do is we will be able to essentially have plausible deniability, but even though we're funding it and we're directing it and we are pressuring everyone to join this censorship coalition. And so this is how you had tens of millions of dollars from the U.S. State Department funding the private sector pop-up censorship mercenary firms, funding the civil society institutions, the universities, the censorship activists, the NGOs, the nonprofits, the researchers, and also on the media side and all these U.S. aid funded media outlets all pushing for censorship. And there's an elegant structure to it, which is that the government pays the civil society institutions to do essentially CIA work against our own citizens. This is why there's so many CIA analysts at these censorship universities, the censorship labs. They'll call them disinfo labs, you know, at 60 plus U.S. universities, all funded by the U.S. government. They do,
and I assume on cable television too. They're everywhere on all the channels.
Yes. DHS actually, you know, onboards, you know, media organizations into its counter disinformation work. And again, because media is
Right
the fourth.
there, you hear that? DHS, Department of Homeland Security, onboards these organizations into their
quadrant in the whole society framework. And it's government, private sector, civil society, and media all aligned like a magnet.
Like that, what he just said, what the pillars were.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is being done under whatever protections the Department of Homeland Security
on all the channels.
Yes.
Has on. Okay, yeah, got it.
Are we good?
Yeah, I mean, I'm disgusted, but I think I'm also good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was like that was the first thing I listened to when dipping the toe back in, and he was really good. Like whatever his thing is, like he said numerous times during the interview. It was interesting he said it this way because I brought this up, I think, in our live stream last week when we were talking about Peter Thiel and the issues with Glenn Greenwald and whatever it was, right? He, like for Mike Benz, like he worked in the government during the Trump administration. He's not opposed to working in the government again. I don't know exactly what his background is. He's like, his only thing he cares about is free speech on the internet, right? So numerous times, like Tucker tried to ask him about this, that, and the other thing that was about different stuff. And he's like, I don't really have an opinion on that. This is the only thing that I sort of am concerned about, right?
Nice.
That said, well, that's nice in some ways, but like that was, remember when I was saying how people make these sort of concessions where they end up working with people who are doing something harmful, but that they allow them to do the thing that they're right.
Yes.
Like he said, but he was very clear and open and honest about it. Right. So I appreciated that. And he was so knowledgeable on everything he was talking about.
Yeah.
And he didn't say things that like, in the scheme of things we didn't already know, but he drew the thread. Like he completely like drew the thread through all of the beads and showed how they're all connected. And like in some ways was probably explaining Tucker's father's job to Tucker better than Tucker's father ever explained his job to him, like on some levels, right? the whole conversation was good. It's an interesting listen. I had no trouble powering through that one at all. But yeah, so that was my first clip. Do you want to do a clip, or do you want me to go to my next clip, which is all the other clips are completely non sequitur to that.
Let's do your next clips.
Okay, so I have this clip. These other two clips are from today. I was listening to Michael Tracy, who's sitting in for Glenn Greenwald, who at this point, like, it's like, I'm wondering what's exactly going on there, and hopefully we'll sort of hear something about that. But Michael Tracy, substituting for Glenn Greenwald and sort of in his dry, whatever way, complaining about how none of these presidential interviews do any hard questions, right? And of course, he talked about Kamala and Donna Bash, but then he talks about Lex Fridman and Donald Trump, and it was just kind of funny to listen to his analysis of Lex Fridman and Donald Trump. So here we go.
Fair use.
And lo and behold, today he appeared on the Lex Fridman podcast, and there's an interesting shift in how these appearances are characterized, because as Lex Fridman tells us, here's how he describes his interview with Trump.
Do you know anything about psychedelics? So I'm not a drug guy, but I recently did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Pause.
There's
Did you hear Lex talking about his ayahuasca journey?
No, I knew he went on one because I knew he went to the Amazon, but I haven't listened to him describe it yet.
He claims that he drank like 8 cups.
Oh yes, I did hear this, and he's like, nothing much happened. I just thought I know the coolest people or whatever, right?
Nothing about anything. I was like, this is so fake.
I did hear that.
Okay, that was it.
Right? It was weird. He's like, I just realized I know the coolest people, man. Right? Like, wasn't that what he said?
Correct. After drinking 8 cups of ayahuasca. Like, what the fuck? Tell us you're a robot without telling us you're a robot, Lex.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
a lot of people that speak to sort of the health benefits and the spiritual benefits of these different psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd probably have a better world if everybody in Congress took some mushrooms, perhaps. Now I know you stay away from all of that stuff. I know also veterans use it for dealing with PTSD and all that kind of stuff. So it's great, and it's interesting that you're thinking about being more accepting of some of these drugs, which don't just have a recreational purpose, but a medical purpose, a treatment purpose.
So we put out a statement today. We're going to put out another one probably next week, be more specific, although I think it's pretty specific. And we'll see how that all goes. That's a referendum coming up in some states, but it's coming up, and we'll see how it does. I will say it's been very hard to beat it. You take a look at the numbers, it's been very hard to beat it. So I think it'll generally pass, but you want to do it in a safe way.
Okay. Is there something about your mornings that's not noisy? And where does all that plastic go?
Okay, so that's a different clip from the Lex Fridman Trump conversation. Actually, that's the most interesting part.
That's a
So
bummer.
I do have to praise Lex Fridman for bringing up the issue of psychedelics with Trump. That alone on principle is incredibly
I
entertaining.
wonder if that was part of the deal with Bobby supporting him, is because Bobby was upset that some of the psychedelics didn't pass last week, right? And so, like, that was one of the ones that hasn't been discussed about, right? Because now suddenly Trump is like for psychedelics. I've never heard that before. Have you?
No, I haven't heard that at all. I don't even know what that was, because his answer didn't make it seem like he actually had an opinion. It just seemed like he was winging it and pulling something out of his ass while trying not to fall asleep.
Right. That's right. It looked like his eyes were like closed, but like
Right.
that seems to me like something Bobby's team would have read him in on a little bit.
Oh,
He knows
yeah.
nothing
Oh,
about
yeah.
it. He doesn't understand it, but they're explaining to him how, like, oh, this is really popular with people, and so if you say this, more people will vote for you.
Yep.
And amusing that Lex Fridman would try to get Donald Trump to comment on the issue of psychedelic drugs. Now, it is a more than legitimate issue, actually, and probably ought to get more discussion. definitely ought to get more discussion, because there have been state-based campaigns in the past couple of years to legalize
His eyes just went up.
psychedelic drugs. I myself, I'm perfectly happy to acknowledge, and I wrote about this at the time, went in March to one of the very first legal psilocybin mushroom clinics in the United States in Oregon.
Loser, just take
And
mushrooms by yourself, pussy.
Ingested a legal dose of psilocybin mushrooms, and it
Illegal dose.
was
Fuck.
great. I mean, it actually is something that people should research and investigate for themselves. Don't just run out and start gobbling any mushroom you see. Do some research.
God forbid you should be self-responsible and not have an authority figure there.
Right.
Oy vey.
Get into the right frame of mind if you feel like it's something you might want to pursue. And it has all kinds of salutary effects in terms of cognition, in terms of just getting a grasp on your psyche.
Stop.
I don't necessarily even disagree with Lex Friedman that if,
Stop. He's done mushrooms once at one clinic, and just like Michael Pollan, now he's preaching to the world how we should approach these. What the fuck?
I thought you'd enjoy it. And also he has some more funny things to say about that.
Okay.
Right. But like, it's hilarious. Like, it just, do you see his eyebrows go up when he's like,
Okay.
members of Congress or people in elected office treated themselves as some psilocybin mushrooms, we might be a little bit better off. I'm not sure that Donald Trump fully grasped what Lex Friedman was asking him about. Donald Trump apparently has come out in favor tentatively, somewhat tepidly, of marijuana legalization. That's interesting. That's actually something that I would applaud. I think resisting marijuana legalization is folly at this point. And I mean, who could seriously argue for police to be busting people anymore for
Kamala
possessing marijuana? That seems pretty absurd. So Donald Trump has recognized that.
so uncharismatic. Like, it's fun. It's like funny to watch. He's so uncharismatic.
Watching him comment on Lex.
And
Snoresville.
given a somewhat qualified endorsement of marijuana legalization. I think there's a referendum in Florida that he's supporting in 2024.
What is happening with his eye bug?
Legalize to some degree marijuana legalization, or legalize marijuana to some degree in Florida and perhaps other states. So
please bring Glenn back.
No, this is.
there you have
I'm
it.
surprised they aired
That's the
this.
one standout portion of the Lex Friedman interview. But the one thing I wanted to note is how the interview was characterized, not as an interview, meaning Lex Friedman and other people who are promoting this stuff, they don't even call it an interview. They call it a conversation. So here's how Lex Friedman introduced his encounter.
That's what Lex calls all of his.
Following is a
podcasts.
conversation with Donald Trump
That's
on
consistent.
this, the Lex Friedman podcast.
That's how
So
Lex introduces
interviews have been
everyone.
replaced, it would appear, by conversations
No.
in terms of this alt media
No.
ecosystem.
No,
right?
this is
Because
fallacious analysis.
Politicians,
No. No, this is ass pulling at its finest.
It's but I mean, like, it's what's funny about this, right, is like, if he goes on, we don't have to listen to it anymore. He does point out some, like, his main point is about the softball questions that Trump was asked, and he goes on to point some of them
Because
out.
it's Lex. It's like,
Right.
what else would we expect?
But it's funny that he's just coming to this. Like,
Right.
like what he's saying now was like, even the thing about the difference between conversations and interviews, or like you and I have talked about these things back in 2017.
Correct.
Right. And like the mushroom, the whole thing, it's like a time capsule, right? It's like, oh, right. Like, is this the 90s or whatever it is, right? So-
Exactly.
and I
Exactly.
thought it was like, it's humorous how uncharismatic he is, but the eyebrows are excellent, man. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. I do like how my appreciation for Michael Tracy mostly comes from how disagreeable he is about everything. He he's very disagreeable about like the right and the left and who gets into this movement and this, that, and whatever. So like, I can appreciate that about him, but his articles are better than
I normally enjoy him on Glenn, but I'd really like to take this moment to thank Texas Tabla for our first super chat of the day.
Oh, Texas Tabla is Prashant. Hi, Prashant. Thank you. Prashant is my awesome friend from Houston who plays like all the interesting like Indian tabla drums and
Oh, nice.
right? Like he has a really cool YouTube channel where he's like introducing all of the different instruments that they use and the techniques to play them and whatnot. And he also helped me make my sound better.
I'd also like to point out to our wonderful audience that when we're given super chats, we plug your stuff the way Emily just did. So thank you for supporting your favorite Loudmouth Valley Girl Jews.
Yay!
Potentially getting yourself a plug.
Whee! I wasn't thinking about it, but I guess it was a plug. I was just like, Prashant is cool. I like Prashant. Okay. All right. So that's that one. And then my next clip is Brett on Joe, but because that came after Eric, I feel like the Weinstein Whopper started with Eric. So why don't you do some of your clips first, and then we'll round out with my Brett. I got about 2/3 the way through the interview. He was just getting into the Rescue the Republic part, right?
Yep.
Like it was like 2 hours of foreplay about,
UFOs and shit.
UFOs and quack scenes, right?
Yeah.
But in which he brings himself, like the rest of the way up to date with what the sort of fully informed, like, alternative media bros positions are on all the things, right?
Okay, there's a lot happening here.
Okay.
All right, well, I pulled a number of clips. Is there any point in sharing Victor Victoria?
Oh yeah. You
Okay,
guys
great.
don't, right? Like if you guys, for those of you who don't recall, this has been something that Dani has brought up over and over and over when analyzing the op here. So it's almost like all of the Weinstein appearances this week were a tribute to the content curation we have done for them. Right?
I feel like it might be part of why I was blocked, because it's like, oh, we're gonna take your ideas and mangle them. Because the other thing about, and I'm just pulling up the right time, is that Eric didn't do it right. He used it, but he actually missed the point, which was even funnier. All right, so fair use. Here we go.
I think there's even an episode of our show titled Victor Victoria.
Oh, 100%.
Joe Rogan is Victor Victoria or something like that, right?
It's first order sophistication. Do you ever see a film called Victor Victoria?
No.
Victor Victoria is I think the tagline on the poster was the story of a woman playing a man playing a woman. And so it was a female impersonator who was actually Julie Andrews.
Right.
Right. Now, if you saw Victor behind Victoria, you certainly saw one level deep. That's one level of counterintuition. And most people, when they get to one level of counterintuition, stop, pat themselves on the back, and at least they're not like the poor fools who only see Victoria, because Victoria, is the female being impersonated. But what happens if you see Sally? And let's imagine Sally is the person playing Victor, playing Victoria. Now you've got a problem, which is you say, that's a woman. So everybody who sees Victor says, you poor bastard, you were fooled. And Reddit is great for this, by the way.
He got it totally wrong. Totally wrong. The whole point of the Victor Victoria comparison is that to pull off the sham, they make up a story that this is a Russian count, and they make up a whole story about this royal pedigree to distract from the cross-dressing switcheroo. So it annoys me that they pulled the metaphor but didn't actually get the point, only further driving home the fact that Eric's not really that bright.
Well, that's true for sure. Right? But this, if I recall, because I've gotten through 47 minutes of that, right? I find Eric even more difficult to listen to than Brett, just because he's so arrogant. And I guess arrogance bothers me more than whatever's wrong with Brett bothers me.
But it's a different level of arrogance. Like, we all know arrogant people, and Eric is in a complete class of its own. It's a whole different realm of arrogance and superiority.
Yeah, it's crazy. So he was talking about this obsession with exposing hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. It was during that section of it, right? That's the problem with people on the internet, right? And that's
a problem with Emily and Dani, is what he was saying.
He tried to say, especially the people on the right, because I'm such a right winger, right?
You're a Trumper.
I'm a Trumper, right? So yeah, so this obsession with exposing hypocrisy, I was like, oh, nice, nice. Okay, next one.
Okay, so I'm just gonna bust through these because I have a few, but they're short. So, and they each serve different purposes. So,
and the hypocrisy thing will come in again when I show my Brett clip. Yes, it's connected to what he just said. Go ahead.
And also noticing the coordination of they're both on these shows in the same week. They're both in Austin in the same week.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go.
Now, there was a fire in my building that has caused a tremendous amount of flood damage. It happened right? Literally, half of the building is having to get torn apart. Fortunately, it's not where our apartment is. It starts just a few apartments down from there. But there was a fire, and then the way the sprinklers went off, literally destroyed half the building.
Interesting.
Maybe I should be suspicious.
I think so. Okay. Fair use.
But they're talking about their visit to the White House in AI.
Tell me.
I really wish we were doing this over Negronis or old fashions.
I'm sure that we could get one ordered.
He said that for me, probably, right? Because I'm always.
It's the second time during this conversation that he's mentioned wishing he had alcohol.
Right.
Alcoholic much, but it's what Chris says next that I want us to pay attention to.
No, that's too Rogan.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll just stick to experimental nootropics and high doses of caffeine.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Experimental nootropics.
Yep.
How did the Consilience Project come to be?
Yep.
How did Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus come to be? Tell us your part of it, Chris.
More than anything, I'm starting to think that they have figured out a way to coordinate it's entrainment, right? Brainwave entrainment. But if you can get everybody on the same nootropic, then it's almost like you can start to sort of play a tune out here that all of that sort of picks up and get everybody without having to talk about it on the phone or send memos, get everyone on the same page, because you're literally it's this, you're getting it's like a briefing, that information goes out over that frequency, and it's just everyone who's on it gets it. Did you see the devious look in his eyes when he said experimental nootropics? You might want to
go ahead.
You might want to go, people can rewind it and look at his eyes, his eyes flare up, kind of like Michael Tracy's eyebrows when he was talking about the mushrooms, when he's like, ha, experimental nootropics.
If anyone wants to look it up, it's 4720.
All right.
It's also, I think that's all the support for RFK behind those Austin bros, right? They're probably all on the same nootropic.
Totally.
Okay, so this is a direct message to you.
I wonder if there's a nootropic that makes you not bothered about what's going on in the middle, right? The Palestinians are pampered nootropic, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a direct message to you and me. Fair use.
No, I should say it differently. I've become aware that in that community, to show any kind of mercy or charity or generosity, let's take the debunking community. The people who are always telling you, don't worry, I will warn you about the bad people on the internet you're consuming. They work at the level of the human, and that's how you know that there's something wrong with them. I can't think.
What the fuck does that mean? They work at the level of the human, and that's how you know there's something wrong with them.
Wow.
I don't even know what to make of that, but I know he's talking about us. Okay, there's this, did you hear, I don't think you heard the Sam Altman.
I stopped at 47 minutes, so yeah, so go ahead. I haven't heard any of this part.
Okay, there's so much in this, I don't want to, because I know you're watching Brett, but your brain on this.
Oh, I went to the section you asked me to, the 259 to 303. I did listen to that, yes.
I am going to share that.
Okay, share it, yeah.
Yeah, but this is the Sam Altman, so, okay, here we go, fair use.
My name is Chris, and when I was 19 years old,
Sorry, Chris was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor.
Oh, it's sad.
That sphere. I like thinking about him.
It's a very odd thing that you bring up, because that example, and when you said the title, Escaping Flatland, I was goosebumps. I have not gotten back to Sam Altman, who asked me for a proposal, because I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to help Sam. Now, Sam is a friend of mine, and I think very, very highly of Sam Altman.
I just want to pause. If this were true, why would you be talking about it on a public podcast?
Right.
If this guy's a real professional, this is really on the level, like, isn't that an insane breach of ethics?
Probably. I mean, I'm not sure what they're talking about, but yeah, okay.
All right, continue.
Despite all the machinations and whatnot, I know him to be a person deeply concerned with humanity who will not be understood.
Wait a second. I thought people who operate on the level of the human
There's something wrong with them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
But wait till you see where
There we go. Exposing hypocrisy again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm supposed to help Sam. Now, Sam is a friend of mine, and I think very, very highly of Sam Altman. Despite all the machinations and whatnot, I know him to be a person deeply concerned with humanity who will not be understood. Even maybe he has to do Machiavellian things in order to take care of humanity. It's a very confusing situation.
And I'm also noticing the insertion of this term Machiavellian. They've infused it into the lexicon, into the wellness company is giving bonuses for all mentions of Machiavellian this week. That's the way.
They get to try like the fresh off the press nootropic or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, this is the one that I asked you to pay attention to.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a quicker way than scrolling, but we're almost there. Here we go.
Operating at the level of the human.
Yeah, because I'm deeply broken. Fair use.
You know, nobody says, "Wherefore art thou?" in our modern context, but we're going to work our asses off so that we can go back. I can still recite the first lines of Chaucer because my high school knew that it was important to know something in Middle English.
I just want to pause. Why is that important?
What does that even mean?
I read Chaucer. I learned Middle English. It has zero real world application. Zero. Okay, continue.
Where is that? How do we stop this memification? I get it. Everything's a joke. But now the idea is that the guys throwing spitballs in the back of the class are the professors, and the class is not functioning. You know, at some level, cringe, earnest. The hardest thing to say is, I believe in this person. Like, you know, Douglas Murray is a mutual friend of ours. I don't know everything Douglas has said. I don't know that he hasn't said some really horrible things, nor does he know whether I've said those things. But I saw him attacked online. That's an archival friendship. I want to be friends with Douglas forever. I really admire that guy.
Because Eric thinks of everything in terms of his fame.
Right.
And how he will live on past this life because he's so important. He's such an important thinker. So he wants that to be in the public consciousness.
Right.
This is how he thinks.
Have you ever heard the term archival friendship before?
No, but I'm surprised that he mentioned it and didn't pause to give himself credit for coining the phrase.
Like, oh, right. He's the great coin phraser of the 21st century.
Correct.
I think it's important for us in the podcasting universe.
Is he in the podcasting universe? I'm pretty sure the portal doesn't exist anymore. I thought he was a physicist. All right, just continue.
To be earnest and to say, I care. You want to talk about something radical? It's not Reddit. The average Reddit post that I read has one point, and it's, wow, you fell for that thing that I saw right through? Really? You're going to use your time on planet Earth to convince people that you see through everything and that everybody who fell for something? There's this brilliant moment that Bret Easton Ellis had when I was podcasting with him, where he started talking, we were talking about seduction. He was like, can you imagine never falling for a seduction? Like, never being seduced your whole life. Man, are you missing out? How do we get people to be able to hold the illusion?
What the fuck? He's lauding pulling the wool over people's eyes, and this is something that should be celebrated as poetic.
Yeah.
Because the guy who wrote American Psycho thinks it's a good thing.
Yep.
Okay, continue.
So with respect to the next couple of months, I don't know that anything crazy is going to happen. It's still a million years. Kamala was not elected through a normal primary system that we've had since 1968 when everything fell apart in Chicago for the Democrats. Donald Trump, the assassination story is a very, very bizarre one. I don't think Donald Trump is acceptable to the international order. I'm not saying that they will take him out with a bullet, but they will certainly take him out with memes, tweets, data, analytics, skullduggery. And I'm actually most interested in this other campaign of Bobby Kennedy, but more importantly at the moment, Nicole Shanahan.
Pause.
Was just up with Nicole.
Because she pays attention to me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? I've done 2 shows in 1 week with her.
Yep. Yep.
Continue.
Nicole Shanahan in the Bay Area, and I haven't endorsed her, and she hasn't asked for an endorsement. What she wants.
Has anyone asked Eric for an endorsement? Like, why would anyone give a shit?
You don't endorse a vice president.
What planet does he live on?
Right.
I don't get it. Okay.
Wants to work on is incredible. I wrote a paper on Coasian labor markets and immigration and how to actually redo immigration properly. And Nicole is thinking about AI and Ronald Coase and his very deep theories of economics. Do you know about Coase?
I listened to the episode you did with her, so I know that much.
To take Kamala, who is currently vice
Pause. I'm not just a pretty face, Eric.
president, and the ridiculous things that she says that make no sense at all, and to talk to somebody who wants to talk about protecting the labor market the way Andrew Yang, Sam Altman, and now Nicole Shanahan are thinking about. You're talking about people who don't even seem to be like the same species.
I need to ask you this. Can you please try and explain to me what you interpret by what can be unburdened by what has been?
Okay, I want to pause because that'll take us into the other thing. But do you want to take the shenane?
Well, I mean, first of all, like, I don't know exactly when they recorded this. It came out over the weekend, right? Like, or like Friday. It came out sort of late last week or Saturday or something. So Bobby Kennedy's been dropped out of the race other than on the state, right? Like, basically for 2 weeks now.
Right.
So no one's endorsing him anymore.
Right.
Unless there's something going on that we're not aware of, though you and I predicted it over a year ago.
Right.
And certainly Nicole Shanahan isn't running for president, or is she? Are we not done with that? Right. I mean, it's interesting. She's dropped 2 interesting sort of ads this week after they've already dropped out. Like,
but what's amazing about the Trump derangement syndrome ad is that she and Bobby have had Trump derangement syndrome.
Right. So there, I mean, there is that one, and then there's one that's basically telling Bobby to go finish the job that his uncle and his dad started by endorsing whatever it is, right? It's good. But like, the more like this is not over yet, right? Like, there's not, I mean, the way I'm seeing it today, right? Because remember, the claim in the beginning was Bobby will end up being the establishment candidate, right?
Correct.
And they've taken us on all kinds of different twists and turns on the way there. But like, the way that I'm seeing it today, and again, it's different than the way that I saw it yesterday, and likely different than the way that I will see it tomorrow, is that are they gonna arrest Trump? Are they gonna somehow take him out and it be decided that Vance is not a popular enough character to carry the ticket, but he's a great vice president and that's why he was there anyway, And is Bobby going to get scooted into that lead role, or even weirder shenanigans? Because I did hear Brett say shenanigans on the Joe Rogan podcast today. Right? He didn't say Shanahan, he said shenanigans. Like, I think that there's more of this weird, whatever this shuffling around of everything has been for the last couple of months, right? I think there's more of it to come. And I think that, like, whatever he's talking about here, and it's probably some combination of both, like, he's delusional, because that's what you do, is you go and endorse people after they've already dropped out, or, right, he's sort of putting his faction's cards sort of like on the table in it. It's very late in the podcast, so not everybody is still listening.
Right.
And it's a way of taking the temperature on things, sort of to see how, like, if people jump or bite, right? And remember, Shanahan said, and she still hasn't endorsed Trump. She's right. She said that she still has, Bobby's endorsed him, but she's had some issues and she's not sure if she's going to endorse him. So is there like another move coming? Is there a Andrew Yang, Sam Altman shenanigans ticket coming, right? Or is the whole, like, are they going to be all on the same thing? Are Trump and Vance going to be like completely gone? And those, because it's PayPal Mafia who've been supporting that, right? Like, are they going to pull this whole thing like the Democrats did, where it's like, in reality, there's no such thing as a Democrat, and the Democratic Party reserves the right to select whoever they want as their candidate, right? Remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
Are we about to see, like, is that layer of the Republican Party about to be unveiled, and that the PayPal Mafia has purchased the Republican Party? So in reality, there's no such thing as a Republican. There's only a PayPal Mafia, and we will install, whatever. I just don't even know at this point. Like I said, clown show, circus, this is the sideshow, right?
Totally. I mean, I can see them going. So one way I see this going, we know that Trump is historically terrible with hiring people, with choosing a team, with choosing who's going to be close to him. He's the worst. And we saw on that Elon Musk interview, like, in the moment, he's like, you should join my cabinet. And it's like, no, Trump, like, don't make any hiring decisions in the moment. You fucking suck at this. So my sense is that best case scenario, Trump has no idea what he's just invited in. And so one way I see this going is they'll find some dirt on Vance, real or fake, get him out, pull in Bobby as the VP, kill Trump, and then it's all systems go for PayPal Mafia, techno-fascism, climate communism, UBI, everything.
AI controlling the border and blah, blah, blah.
Correct. Everything these people are there to bring in.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the choreography is going to be to get us across the floor, right? But it's getting weirder and weirder. But I still feel like Polly nailed it with the RFK becomes the solution to everything. Right?
100%. I mean,
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. As I said, I think the only people seeing this clearly are you, me, Polly, Catherine Austin Fitz, and Whitney Webb, but I never know where she really stands on anything. But here's this article I found on Shanae. Did you know she was born in China?
I can't remember. I can't say one way or another whether I've heard that or not. It's like all this other stuff sounds familiar to me, the bipolar, the schizophrenia, all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, maybe.
Because my last clip that I'm about to get to, I'm starting to see all these, I don't know, there's a lot of like high-powered, multi-generation communists swirling around this swirling around Bobby. But I wasn't sure if we had talked about this. So University of Puget Sound, Tacoma, Washington, that's also where Evergreen is.
Yep.
Like, interesting geographic. She got a World Trade Organization Studies certificate from Geneva Graduate Institute. Did you know that?
Well, there's the weird one up top where she was like, I saw something when I was a kid and I knew I wanted to be a patent lawyer, right? There we go. Inspired by commercials on television, Shanahan said that at age 12, she had decided that I was definitely going to become a patent lawyer. Really? Like, that's what you wanted to be when you were 12? Patent lawyer? Like, I could see being a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, but like, I didn't know what a patent was when I was 12. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I thought patent were leather shoes.
Right. But okay, so let's say this is true, right? And there was something up here about some incredible high merit scholarship.
Right, I saw that.
Right, so she got a high merit scholarship because she's so fucking smart, but she attended the University of Puget Sound.
Right.
How does that make sense? And then there's just more shit about, like, you know, how she fucked Elon, married a billionaire. Like, I hate these women who are in politics who hoard their way there. And it's supposed to be feminine empowerment because they slept with people who helped them get into these positions. It's disgusting to me. All right. So the last one from Eric. Wait, we're going back to share. Sorry. I get annoyed about the whore women. It just like gives us a bad name. Like, there's no merit. Women can't have merit. Women don't have brains. We just have to fuck our ways to the top. Got it. Okay, so last one. I found the one that I had mentioned to you earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really that long. Okay. Fair use. Last one.
And then there's some holdout who won't go along with the program.
If Kamala Harris is as unsophisticated as we think she is, do we really believe that she is quoting from the dark depths of...
Why do you believe she is as unsophisticated as you have just claimed? What did her father do?
I don't know.
Look it up. And by the way, I am assuming that I will end up on the Open Skies watch list as a result of this podcast.
That is crazy, by the way, what happened to Tulsi. The quad S on her boarding pass. Donald J. Harris, the father of Kamala Harris, Jamaican-American economist, professor emeritus at Stanford University, originally from St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica.
What kind of economics?
Known for applying post-Keynesian ideas to development economics. What's post-Keynesian?
I don't know.
Post-Keynesian economics is a school of economic thought with its origins in the general theory of John Maynard Keynes, subsequent development influenced to a large degree by a name I can't pronounce.
I think that there was a lot of Marxist thought. And as a man whose family comes from the far left, you recognize certain sorts of commonalities. I'm sure she would see them in me. The Democratic Party is not communist. I don't think that that's right. That's the critique of many of my right-wing friends. But it is welcomed in a lot of neo-Marxian thought. I would say AOC is straight up Marx.
I feel like that's as close as he has come to telling us he comes from a communist upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, I've told you, like, so much of my insight on what's going on here, on how these people work, is that, like, I see things within my own family that looks like that.
Yep.
Right. Like, there's definitely like a Jewish Chinese connection, right? Like, that my entire family has been enmeshed in, whether it's, my uncle's import-export business with Hong Kong, whether it was my grandmother's frequent trips to China, or whether it was, her father's, her uncle's, I can't remember if it's a great-great-grandfather or great-great-uncle. He was an ambassador to China, and then he also worked for United Artists. I've told you about this before, right? Like, there's definitely some sort of like pipeline of finances and ideas and exchanging secrets and information and whatever that is part of like why I smell certain things, because like I grew up in, there's just something I recognize there, right? I agree with him. I do think it's true. Like, when the right calls the Democrats communists, they make themselves look stupid because it's not exactly true. And when the left calls the Republicans fascists, they look stupid because that's not exactly true. But there's all of these sort of like thought lines or different ideas that sort of get in, right? Like there's definitely like a level of, you know, cultural Marxism and, you know, on the right, some sort of like weird, you know, rugged, you know, sort of rugged individualism for the common people, but socialism for the government and for the wealthy people type of thing, right? That comes from some of these ideologies, but like is you're being not specific enough when you just call the left communists and the right fascists. Like it's not really a good explanation of what's happening. And ultimately it makes you look dumb because the obvious things associated with communism or fascism like don't end up happening. And people are like, that's what people are assessing it on. But like, but there's definitely ideas being pulled. And this is probably his most honest moment sort of in the interview, right? And Robert said the same thing about Kamala. Robert doesn't think Kamala is stupid either.
So did James Lindsay. That's what I'm noticing. So now I've heard Eric, James Lindsay, and Robert say the same thing, that it's all an act. Robert was the first one who I used the word Machiavellian. So, and I haven't watched everything, but it seems like he's the one who kind of dropped that into the lexicon that this op seems to be picking up on. But that's three people who I won't say I respect Eric, but the way he said it, I was like, because he goes into an explanation of like, he actually does a good job of like, George, is W the little bush?
Yes.
So he's talking about like, he gave these really intelligent speeches and then he was elected into office and all of a sudden he took on this like, aw shucks.
Aw shucks, yeah.
Right, and all of a sudden he just became stupid. And the way that Eric explained it, I'm like, that is true. So I'm intrigued by this theory.
A couple things can be going on simultaneously, right? Like she's obviously been very successful in her career, right? And she both like on the overt public level and then also like, remember all that weird stuff with the Masonic fraternal police order in California, like that whole weird thing and connections to some of the, you know, string pullers and whatever. But she probably has come up in a family with deep connections to, you know, Masonic orders or secret societies, maybe of a different flavor than that which we're normally used to. If her father was a professor at Stanford, then that is definitely sort of something going on over there. And then probably something even further and deeper in terms of like their culture, Jamaican, Indian, like whatever, some other factions. So she probably is either highly intelligent or highly indoctrinated in a system that she knows how to execute, whether there's like a high degree of unique thinking going on there or not. And also some people are really terrible public speakers, right? Like I know plenty of people who like, you know, are genius level intellects and just no matter how many like years they go to Toastmasters or Landmark or whatever, they can never master like looking good in public when they speak in public.
And if that's the case, my guess is they wouldn't choose to go into politics.
Unless like whatever system that they're representing, like this person is the perfect, like this is the person who knows how to execute this. And so we'll do everything to cover the weakness. It's kind of like when you're, you know, now when you're putting together the gymnastics team, whether it be for college or for the Olympics or whatever it is, not everyone has to do the all around, right? Like that you can have some people that are just event specialists.
Yep.
Right. And so you can have one specialist that's good on vault and floor and one that's good on bars and beam.
What's Kamala good at?
Well, but back in the day when you had to have everyone doing the all around, sometimes there was someone who was so good at one thing that they were on the team, even though they were horrible on bars. Like that was the most common one is like
Megan on bars. All she had was bars.
Or something, right? Well, this is the opposite though. What I'm saying is somebody is so bad on one event, but they're so good at so many other things deemed necessary. Or maybe it's just they're so good on that one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's definitely, I mean, like Steven Nedorotzik on the pommel horse, like this past Olympics, like he waited around all day and then he knocked it out of the park on pommel horse. That everything else will be done to compensate for that person's weakness so that they can get done the thing they're good at. So that is entirely possible. She could be carrying some sort of family legacy of being very highly skilled at, like, you know, infiltrating things or at executing certain sort of systems or what, I have no idea, right? But or we could be just living through like a gigantic psyop. Both things, but like both things are possibilities, and I don't see them as mutually exclusive of one another.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mystery with her because there's also the narrative that like it was Joe's final fuck you to announce her as his predecessor when no one actually wanted her because she really didn't have value. But then again, going back to like the real Victoria, not whatever Eric's fucked up version was, like we just have so many different, like Russian dolls of psyops. But most importantly, I want to thank Misty Moon for a super chat.
Misty! All right, last clip here.
Wait, I just want to say DePuma bending her knees correct. That is where I feel like that is her only skill or benefit is that she's bending her knees. So agreement on
her skirt and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Like, wasn't Willie Brown like 80 when she slept with him or something like that, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So last clip. And this sort of goes back to the us being called out as being obsessed with exposing hypocrisy and thinking about the open dialogue and blah blah blah. Here's our favorite, like our favorite puppy dog right here. Brett Weinstein today on the Joe Rogan show that was recorded the same day that we were recording ours the other day. Here we go.
He was in Mickey's studio.
Well, that seems reasonable.
I must be a crank.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? That was what was.
He just admitted it. He's a crank, but that's not the point. Here comes the point.
Joe's like, that's so funny that you
during
are.
The pandemic was people that were clearly not physically healthy, saying that the only way that you could be healthy was to take this medication.
Fair use.
That to me was bizarre. It was so bizarre because they weren't even considering taking care of their body. They were only considering taking this medication as if taking care of your body was foolish.
Right.
Which is so weird. Like when I had Hotez on, he was talking about his diet.
I remember
like,
that.
What do you eat? Do you ever work out? Like, he eats junk food. He eats junk food and blasts himself with vaccines.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with him, but it's
something not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just the contradictory statements over the years and his stance on vaccines when Trump was president. His stance on the mRNA platform when Trump was president versus the immediate 180 that he took.
Yeah, I mean,
Biden took in office.
I hate to say this, but he's either a cold-hearted liar or the most profoundly unself-aware person that has ever existed. I mean, it's stunning.
Is he talking about himself?
Right? So, like, like, when I first listened to it, my main point wasn't about what Joe was talking about the stances during the Trump administration, but actually he held the same positions. Like Brett had the opposite position at a certain point and then changed it. So the contradictory statements and the whatever, right? But I mean, really? Like a cold-hearted liar, right? Or the most self-unaware person that has ever existed. Stunning.
Also, that's really out of character for Brett to use a name like that. I've never heard him speak about anyone like that. He's usually much more civil.
Okay, but I think it almost felt like the way Joe was setting it up, that was aimed this way as well. Like he's basically going to get Brett to say something about someone else that really it's a comment about himself. Listen, the next part is interesting as well. This is what Joe says.
I think it's 2. It's number 2. It's the latter. With a little bit of number 1 that is necessary in order to be number 2.
Right. So it's like he just gave Brett an analysis of himself. It's number 2, totally self-aware with a little bit of cold-hearted liar to be okay in order to be able to execute number 2. I thought that was satisfying.
And mentioned something about listening to your interview with David Martin. Is that something you can share with us?
Oh, when I was what he is now saying, right? Like it's like every time he goes on one of these tours to announce the new operation he's working on in order to bring about his thought experiment about what would happen if we experimented with the unity government, whatever the fuck it is, right? Every time he goes on one of these tours, he has updated his position based on what you're allowed to think now, as opposed to what you were allowed to sort of think before, and then also to cover up or to sort of cover up the holes in the story that the contradictions exposed, right? And so now he's basically the ideas that we were talking about in that episode that I did with David called Closing the Loop from 2021. That Brett is now there, and that's what he doesn't go into the whole thing about Sherlock biosciences, but just in terms of like, oh, it wasn't really about this vaccine, it was really about like setting the stage for everyone to accept everything through this kind of intervention and blah, 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 right? So again, 3 years late, 4 years late, right? But the whole first part of the interview about the part where they were talking about it was so sloppily explained on both sides, but they were talking about like the multiverse and different timelines and Brett was trying to debunk Joe's belief in it and whatever, like that all felt kind of, aimed as well. But then it got into like UFOs and aliens and it was like, okay, like this is, he's tasked with going around and promoting what the Bobby Shanahan, his portion of that platform, which will be disclosure, whether it be about UFOs or CIA or whatever, and then the health, right? And why it's now he doesn't believe in really, he still believes in the idea of what he thought vaccines were, but as of now, he doesn't believe in any. Think about how long it took him to get from I don't trust this vaccine to like maybe I shouldn't trust any of them, right? It's like a day's
Rosie and Heather were on Bill
newer,
Maher.
Right, a newer, better vaccine.
Which is still tied into Malone, who's part of
the whole thing.
Rescue the Republic, which is
why Brett can't let go of still being in love with the idea that such an elegant solution could exist. Remember, it's such an elegant solution. But his whole thing of like debunking the idea of, he was calling it like the multiverse or whatever, is that it makes it harder, not easier. So if it doesn't make it easier, then it's not true.
That was so dumb, that part of the conversation, because
it was so dumb, right? Yeah, it was basically a knock at the people who like think that time travel and interdimensional movement and whatever it is more important than rescuing the Republic.
I feel like it's like the gloves are off, and it's like now they're going to start hitting back. Like they've let us go and nip at them for long enough, but now they're shifting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to share the clip, but I feel like we've gone on long enough. But I just want to share, there's been these clips coming out with Catherine Austin Fitts and Whitney Webb and whoever this guy is with her. And in one of them, Whitney says, I know a lot of times I'm criticized for only criticizing the right and not the left. Am I conflating those? But I know you had mentioned something about that on our very last show. And the hearing her say that, I'm like, oh, this is the week where everyone's just letting us know that they're listening to us.
I mean, I don't remember exactly what I said. And, I don't know that would be, I think I said something about like, it's very selected what she
addresses it specifically.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if it was so much of a right left thing, but like there's certain people she's very, very interested in talking about their corruption. But if someone says, well, what about this? She's like, not really important. Let's get back to talking about, right. And that was how I was saying Glenn Greenwald does some of that same kind of stuff. Right. Okay. You don't have a clip though.
I do, but do we want to?
No, let's just give it
that interesting.
Any questions or comments from the the chat.
So I did see something early on. Someone's very curious about your, is it synchromystic architecture shows?
My
So
interdimensional architecture shows.
correct. And I know a bunch of people are weighing in to recommend shows, but I saw that early on.
Yeah, the most recent thing on architecture I did was last week on Chris Gardner's Biocharisma podcast. We talked about the skyscrapers of today being the underground bases of tomorrow, and I kind of laid out a little bit of my theory on that. But yes, I haven't done other than that, I haven't done an all-out interdimensional architecture show in a while. So just because I try not to, like, once I've said what I have to say about something, I kind of, until the next thought comes or the next inspiration, I don't keep trying to, squeeze.
Someone says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Someone said, Oswald Spengler, Catherine Austin Fitts still likes RFK Jr. No, I don't think so. Where didn't we share that clip? Was it the last show? The last word salad? It seems like she's on to this op. And understands this interview with Whitney's where they unpack that this purple party is a PayPal mafia psyop to bring in the biometric security state. So I don't think Catherine Austin Fitts is still for him, because at least in this video, she made it clear that she saw through it.
Although I do think that, like, I didn't watch, but I saw that, like, once RFK endorsed Trump, then, like, Dark Journalist was kind of pro Camelot again or whatever. I'm not sure if it's what it
oh yeah, well, Dark Journalist has been pushing for RFK to join Trump for months now.
Okay, so so I don't know. I haven't seen Catherine on Dark Journalist in a long time, but that's how the reason that we have a Dark Journalist is basically because Catherine and Joseph sort of brought him forward, right? Kind of thing. And so I don't know if he is still her interviewer of choice. Like, she doesn't go on too many shows, and it felt like that he was brought forward because that was who Joseph and Catherine wanted to be interviewed by. Like, I could be wrong about that, but that was sort of the feeling at the time, right? And whatnot. He, like, the first time I really ever heard of him was when he hosted her second secret space program conference.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then, it was kind of like he interviews her and Farrell and a few other people, but outside of that, he doesn't really interview anybody other than, like, a small circle of people that he sort of does. And I know a lot of people who are prolific and have huge names in alternative media who have reached out to him before wanting to have a conversation with him or be on his show, and he just doesn't respond. So it's kind of like he has his sort of selected, curated narratives that he's willing to explore, and that's kind of all. And that doesn't mean that some of them aren't interesting, but I don't know. I would be interested to have a conversation in person in real life with Catherine, right? And sort of really kind of probe, because I've learned so much from her. She's definitely been, like, an important part of the learning for all of us and whatnot. But sometimes it has felt like she is, and it's reasonable. Some people are just more cautious than others, right? Like, that she's still very system based, and whatnot. But I think that she definitely has taught us a lot about the inner workings of the state, right? And the government, and how that, correlates with the financial system and whatnot. And that's super valuable. So I respect her.
I do too.
All right. Any last call here? Later, I bet RFK will be president. Don't know why I think that, but I don't think he's out. Yeah, I think that this election is just going to be the gift that keeps on giving. Like, probably, like, next March, they'll still be running. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what this is, but it definitely, I don't think we're going to get a rest from it. Yeah. All right. Oh, here we go. What does Emily think about Paul Check? And any thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? Well, I don't know who Paul Check is, so I haven't had a single thought about him.
Paul Check, we've talked about him because remember Robert Forte was really into him for a while. He was invited on his show. He's in with the Aubrey crew. I think is he like into biohacking and stuff?
I'm looking him up right now. I've never heard of. Let me see.
But I know I felt like we had talked about it, that there were some sort of suspicions, and someone I'm just noting on the chat.
Oh, I have been on this website before, this Czech Institute.
I think we were talking about that he might be like one of Robert's handlers, or vying for that position or something.
I now that I'm on this website, I realize I've been here before, but I don't remember why I was there or what my take was at the time. So I would have to update myself on my own commentary and remind myself what I thought at that time. So I have no current thought. And then as far as Aaron Rodgers, you know, like I mean, I don't know, like I am resistant to, it's like when, because someone is famous, right, and saying a thing that feels satisfying to hear because it's fucking plainly obvious, then that makes it valuable to listen to them about other things. Like, he's a football player. Like, I hear he's pretty good. I know he tore his Achilles last year. I think he's playing again this year. We'll see. You know, like, even my most preferred athletes, I often disagree with most or all of what they say or think or do or whatever it is. And I can hold both sort of things in my mind at the same time. But he's really good buddies with Aubrey Marcus, and that's the biggest red flag.
Exactly. Thank you, Jim, for your super chat.
Thank you, Jim.
What is the best embedded message from Wizard of Oz movie, in your opinion?
Oh, God, I haven't watched the movie in a really long time. Right. And I've never done that thing that they say where you're supposed to like listen to Pink Floyd backwards while watching the or whatever it is, that. I mean, I find little things all the time that correlate to like ideas that I have in my head about Wizard of Oz, because like I was definitely brought up more through the Wizard of Oz programming than the Alice in Wonderland programming, though there are touches of each. You know, but I would have to go. I haven't watched it in a long time. It would be interesting to go back and watch it and see. So I'm gonna have to get back to you on that, Jim. But I think I might. I think maybe I'll watch The Wizard of Oz like over the holidays or something this year with the family or something like that, and see what I think, because it was definitely had a lot. It definitely affected me a lot as a kid, both from like the behind the scenes programming aspect, but also I liked that movie when I was little. I really did.
Christine Bose said that she was told that Catherine Austin Fitts tried to block legislation designed to protect property rights in Tennessee. I don't know anything about it. I know a lot of times they'll try to pass legislation that seems good on the surface. I don't know anything about this legislation, but I know a lot of times they'll try to pass something that seems good, but there's some hook or there's something embedded in it that actually isn't good, and she seems like someone who reads all the details, but I don't know anything about that.
Oswald Spengler says that I have a deeper voice than Paul Check. He said it's not an insult to me. You're funny. Okay. But Jim said, how about Dorothy always had the power to leave the illusion? Yeah, like I recall that now that you say that. I think that's it. Like, sometimes like when Dani and I are doing this and we're like, Dani and I have lots of conversations back and forth. Like, do we sound like lunatics when we're talking about like them literally like listening to our shows to plug the holes in their raft and to to machine learn their robots or what? Because it sounds fucking insane. But like, there is definitely a part of me that isn't sure that if you and I stopped talking about all of this, that it wouldn't cease to exist.
Yeah.
So there you go, Jim. That's that, and so if Dani and I are responsible for dragging all of you into our delusion, I don't know if you're enjoying it more than you're frustrated by it. So I don't want to cease your enjoyment if you are, but sorry if you're not, right? So anyhow, all right. Is that it? I think we're done. Are we done?
That's it. Let's just say happy birthday, Hello Kitty, which we didn't cover.
Oh, the fucking Hello Kitty. Yeah.
But
okay.
it's fine. But happy 50th birthday, Hello Kitty Mind Control.
All right, guys, we love you. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you next week.